Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Conversations with Shawna show. I'm so excited to have our guest here today. And if you're coming in live from my Powerhouse Women group, just click the link above to give StreamYard permission to say hi. Let us know where you're coming in from. And if you're on the replay, give us a hashtag replay, shout out and say hi so we can say hi back. And for those of you who I have not met yet, my name is Shawna Roche, and I'm a transformational coach. And I help you through fear, doubt, and uncertainty into love, expansion, and possibilities. So having said that, I can't wait to introduce to you my lovely guest and friend, Marlo Ellis. Welcome, Marlo.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Shawna. You know how much I adore you, so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I feel like the timing is so perfect.
Yeah, it is. I'm so excited to have you here. And for those of you who don't know Marlo, she's a champion for women and the founder of the Uncommon Woman. Beautiful, beautiful movement. Marlo helps high-achieving women transform their painful past into their personal power so they can unlock their greatest potential and rise. She does this by providing safe spaces for them as they build a powerful connection between their stories, their gifts, and their vision they have for their lives. As a result, they free themselves from suffering, liberate their energy, and empower themselves as they continue to build a solid foundation for the work they are meant to do in this world. Yay! Welcome. I'm so excited.
And you know what's funny is when we think about that, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. There's a lot going on there. But thank you so much for having me and for having this discussion. And it's so vital and so important, especially right now with the state of the world.
Yeah,
right? So
it's very important. And you're doing such beautiful work. And in your Uncommon Woman, I mean, you're doing these Transcendence Principles, the Awakened Path. So let's talk about the work you're doing right now.
Okay. So I need to give a little bit of backstory. So in January of 2019, which is, the time that I met you, I was moving from my hometown, which is where I am now, out west to Calgary, Alberta. And I thought I was moving for my work. And I guess I was, when I reflect back, I was, but I was really, more than anything, I was moving because I needed to create a container, like a really quiet, calm, peaceful container where I could do some deeper healing. And it was work that had been a long time coming. And, I really truly believe in the constant process of healing, right? So it's not like we heal and then we're good. And so there's always things happening. And I'd had a really, really jam-packed 4 years between 2016, 2015, when I switched careers from being a fitness professional over into the coaching industry. And I had been working so hard to launch everything that I hadn't really taken a big chunk of time to just let it all settle in and to integrate some of the things I'd learned, some of the experiences, to reflect and to really just get clear about where I wanted to go next. So I kind of hit the ground running in 2016 when I really launched the Uncommon Woman officially. And then I ran my first Uncommon Woman live event. My first Uncommon Woman cross-country tour in the fall of 2018, which was amazing. But right after that, like a week later, I ran a retreat in Tulum, Mexico. And I got home and I was exhausted. I was completely exhausted. And I was like, I think I need to move. So I moved to Calgary, Alberta in January of 2019. And it was the beginning of a very long healing time for me. And you were part of that, actually. You were there. And I met you in that time. I met really beautiful people and I had really gorgeous experiences. But I also spent a lot of time alone. And I changed everything about my life. I changed the way I spent my time. I changed the food that I ate. I became a vegetarian. I got really, really connected to spirit again, which I had been quite disconnected from looking back in relation to where I am now. And I started some really strong healing processes, and they included things like meditation and sitting in silence and, unraveling more of my story and kind of looking at how I was going to impact the greater good. So I moved home in March of this year, just like days before everything was shut down in COVID. And it gave me an opportunity to reflect on what that time had meant to me, because I had planned on going and staying, and I actually went. It was like an extended holiday is what it was. And I came home and I realized that everything that I had been experiencing when I was away was my healing, my next level of healing. And it was also an upgrade and an ascension. And in many ways, I feel like it was a transcendence into the next version of who I was from where I was. So the Transcendence Principles, which is what we're going to chat about today, is a reflection of that time in my life and the 6 principles that I was living by. That at the time, I didn't really realize that I was living by these 6 principles. But now looking back on it, it was very clear that this was the practice that really nurtured me. And I feel more peaceful than I've ever felt. I'm clearer about my work than I've ever been. And considering the state of the world, you know, that's odd. I don't know that a lot of people right now could say that. Yeah. I certainly know that people who have been spending time in meditation and really focusing in on their life work and their energy can say that. But I think that there's a lot of people out there who are really struggling. And I was one of them. And so I wanted to deliver these principles to the women in the Uncommon Woman Ministry to give them some tools. So that's the backstory of the Transcendence.
I love that, because I met you it was actually at a retreat in December of 2018. And then you came and stayed with us for 5 days. And I remember your energy then, like you were just like, you had a lot on the go, and it was like, wow, you know, forced to be reckoned with. And so then I've been watching your journey unfold, and it's so beautiful to see where you are, and that to look back and go, wow, this is so amazing that I've been a part of this, to see it from an outsider looking in kind of thing, as well as your friend. And I mean, I got to have lunch with you right before you moved back. So I was excited about that.
You did that.
Yeah, me too. And so I'm so excited, and I feel so, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you, because you are in such a beautiful place. And now that you're unrolling, bringing all this, which you've been through, all of it to your group is so beautiful. So let's talk about your principles.
Okay. So here, I got my dog okay, here we go.
Which dog? Is it Pink or Raindrop? Oh,
she insisted that she'd be here. So, yeah, and I want to thank you and, Bernie, for your incredible part in my journey, because after that retreat, remember, we were just like in love with each other, and you were like, why don't you come and stay with us? And that was a really powerful experience for me. I felt like it was the pause that I needed before I went home, because I kind of made the decision when I was in Tulum that I was going to move, but then it sealed the deal when I went to your house in Okotoks, but like Calgary, right? Yeah. I just it was just so serendipitous that you guys invited me there. And I felt like it was where I needed to be at the time, you know, and there was a level of running away for sure. I was running away from some things, but you know, you can't run away from yourself, right? So I got to Calgary and nothing had changed. You know, I was still experiencing the same things that I was experiencing when I was home, but it did create the container, and people like you guys were really important in that, you know, just knowing that I had a home base if I needed, right? Like if there was somebody that I needed to call, I knew that I could call you and say, and I didn't really have to. And what's really strange is that I knew that those people were around me, but I did spend a lot of time in stillness and silence, which is the first principle. And that principle really taught me how to create the harmony that we need in our lives, especially when we have an entrepreneurial spirit, because you tend to believe that you have to show up all the time. And I believed that, but I also, as a result, you know, lost a lot of me. I lost relationships. I wasn't able to nurture the relationships that mattered to me as much as I wanted. I was doing the best that I could at the time, and I don't regret any of it. But I was able to, in January of last year, say, okay, like, you know, what is working and what's not working, because you can't live like this for the next 40, 50 years. Because I plan on doing my work for the rest of my life. You know, it's my passion. I feel like in some ways I've retired from work and now I just do this. But I really needed, you know, I needed to create the space. So the first principle was all about creating silence and stillness in your life, which for an extroverted, like A-type personality, and I think you're probably similar, it's really a challenge, you know, and I felt alone a lot and felt lonely a lot. And I had my people on speed dial when I was feeling like I was really struggling. And sometimes I was like, am I depressed? You know, I was trying to figure out if it was depression, but it wasn't. It was just that place that we go when we're healing and when we're kind of the dip before the rise, you know. I now have learned that we don't need to name things. Like, just because you're sad and lonely doesn't mean you're depressed, you know. And so I didn't put that on myself. I just allowed myself to feel all the feelings, and there were a lot of feelings there. So
I love that you said that, Marlo, because that has been coming up a lot, the feelings and a lot of feelings. And I know for my personality, I was like, I didn't allow myself to feel stuff. It was like I was just out there in my career. It was like kicking butt, taking names later. It was like there was no room for feelings. But when you do get quiet in the stillness, you nailed it. The feelings do come up, all the stuff comes up, and then you start questioning things you never questioned before.
yeah, right. And there's a lot of truth in our silence and in our stillness, you know, like things that really bothered me that I was either doing or experiencing, whether it was external or internal. And I was like, this doesn't feel good. Why am I allowing this to continue? And so in my stillness and silence, I was able to really explore those experiences in my life and make decisions. And it's really difficult for me because I have such a noisy mind. It was really difficult for me to make those decisions without being still and being silent. Like some people can, but I can't. I really have to just, you know, create a silent space and a container. And so, yeah, moving through the emotions is definitely part of that stillness and silence. And I actually think that it's a safe place, right? When we're still and when we're silent and we feel the tears coming, we feel safe, right? We don't always feel safe when that happens in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of a room or whatever. And so it's also just creating those containers for you to allow those things to come out and come through you, right? Yeah. So that's the first principle. And then the second, and we're speaking about these, by the way, in the Uncommon Woman Ministry over the next 30 days. So if people are interested in coming and being part of that, I encourage you. And it's just a free series that I'm giving because I want to share information. But so that was last week, all the recordings are up. And this week we're really diving into unraveling story. And the reason for that is that we all have story. You know, we all have layers upon layers of stories. And I kind of explained it last night as you know, our soul is like the spool of a thread, you know. So when we're born onto this earth and given a body, we're this spool. And then right from birth, the thread starts to wind around the spool, right? And it becomes layer upon layer of story. And over a lifetime, you know, I'm 51. So over a lifetime, there's a lot of story there. And unless we reflect on those stories and give them meaning and begin to unwind them, right, our soul becomes constricted. And also at the same time, we get this outer shell, right, that starts to build out this way so that people don't even have access to who we really are anymore. And I think that this is something that is really common, is that, you know, we don't look at the stories and we don't reflect and do the healing and give them meaning. And so we allow them to constrict us. And this is why more people than ever are depressed, more people than ever are sick, more people than ever are being diagnosed, more people than ever are on medications and they're trying to figure out their lives, and divorce rates are high and suicide rates are high. You know, this is all about this spool around us, you know, and we need connection and we need love and we need nurturing. And when we build these, when these spools get really, you know, you can just kind of see it over a lifetime, you know, put it on fast forward. And here we are, this little tiny, you know, this strong core, but it's all covered up and we can't even access it anymore because it's just so, you know. So unraveling story is taking all of our life experiences and slowly just going in the opposite direction and like looking at them upon reflection and saying, okay, what's the meaning of that now? Like, it had this meaning here, but now it means something different today. And I use the example of, last night I was like, if a bride breaks her leg at a wedding, like, can you imagine if you broke your leg at your wedding? It would have like destroyed your wedding day, right? It would have been horrible. All the you'd have been in a merge, it would have been a shit show. And some people would say this is the most terrible thing that's ever happened to me, And then 5 years down the line, that marriage dissolves. That gives those people a whole new perspective. Of course, I broke my leg on my wedding day. The wedding was a disaster. We should never got married. Right? So as we move further away from our story, they take on a different meaning, to the point where eventually, even if the marriage stays together, my people might laugh and say, if we can make it through that, we can make it through anything. Like, it's all about perspective, right? Because truly, a bride breaking her leg isn't going to make or break the wedding day. The wedding day is about the marriage, and the marriage is about all of the things after that day. But, and so perspective is everything. And so when we can start unwinding our stories and going, wow, the meaning that I gave this at the time is so different than the meaning that I give it now. There's some relief to that. There's some peace to that. We can set it down, and we can lighten our load so that we can start breathing again, right? And so that's the unraveling of the story. So that's principle number 2.
I love it.
I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, it's good. I'm listening. I'm taking it all in, and I'm just like, yes.
Like, does that resonate with you? Like, does that idea of the spool resonate?
I love that analogy, because I've heard lots of different analogies. I know the layers, the onions peeling back, but I love that analogy because I could just see it. Like, you could see the spool getting bigger, bigger, and bigger till it's almost like one of those big construction ones with all the copper on it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I can't even fit my spool in a room anymore. It's so big.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And then what, right? And the thing is, then we look at it, we go, oh my God, I've got so much work to do. And it's why people will take like a stress leave and they just have a full breakdown. It's like they're literally healing like generations of pain and trauma, or their own, decades of life that haven't been addressed. And so if we can live these principles daily, instead of what I did, which was, it was basically a decade of pain that I was healing from last year, because, I had been in this abusive relationship and then instantly launched a business back in 2012. And then right after that, it was 2 gyms and then my coaching business. And so I literally took like 15 months to heal. And, I ran my business and I still ran my programs, but I did kind of like my minimum. I just had no energy left. All of my energy was going into my experience of healing. And so, I think that if we can learn to, as humans who are having this, we're having a human experience, but our souls are ages old. If we just remember to continue to always be reflecting on, even on our day, like at the end of a day, to just reflect on the day. Imagine if we did it day to day as opposed to like year to year or decade to decade, right? So that's the second principle. And then the third principle is taking 100% responsibility. So this was also like the process that I went through as I was starting to unwind things. So first I had to get still, right? Which meant me moving and creating a sanctuary. I loved my home. I had this great little home.
It was so beautiful.
So lots of sunshine. And I spent so much time there, like more than the average person. And then I started thinking, that's where the stories came out. Then I started going, okay, what's my responsibility here? Because I just know too much about growth and development to be like, meh, meh, meh. And I did a lot of that. Don't get me wrong. There was a full-on pity party, but there was also so much of that. Well, okay, so sure, be sad about that, right? But what was your responsibility? How could you have done that differently? How will you do this differently moving forward, right? So the woman that you want to be, how did she deal with this situation? That was really powerful for me. And I'm still living that right now. I have really changed the way that I respond to the world in general. And to conversations, to friendships, to my business, to my family, to nature. I ran away from the lake that's in front of me. This big it's the biggest freshwater lake in the world. And we have really cold winters. And I was like, I'm so sick and tired of, being in the cold. And I was running away, and I came home in March, and I just saw it through different eyes. I actually get emotional about it because
I love it.
The lake that I grew up on has so much meaning for me, but I was so broken and I was so frustrated, and I had my filters were all foggy from from my decade. And I was so tired that I couldn't appreciate it. So this summer, I decided that I had fallen back in love with my hometown, and I was like, I want to have a house on the lake. So the strangest thing, and I got an email saying, would you like to rent our house? Nobody knew that I was looking for a house on the lake. I didn't tell anybody. I was just doing it. I was just quietly looking. It's really hard to find a house on the lake here in Thunder Bay because everybody wants to be on it. And I got an email from a very dear friend of mine that said, we're going to be going back to Hong Kong for the winter. The people that are watching our house are now leaving because they have a child, and we need somebody to watch our house. It's a mansion on the lake. And so I feel like it was just all part of my healing, is that the tools are showing up.
Yeah.
So taking responsibility for that, like it wasn't the city itself was not doing me any harm.
Yeah.
I have to take responsibility for my life that was here, and just everything around it,
Yeah.
So, and I think some people might resonate with that. I think that we often want to run away from our location when our life is challenging.
Yeah.
So many women will say to me, I'm moving, or I'm selling my house, or I'm moving to a different place, or I'm going to go to the beach and everything's going to be better. And then you go there and you're still alone and you're still carrying the emotions with you. And the sun feels good, but truth be told is that the work is going to be the same no matter where you go. You know
what? That is so exactly. That's okay. I was talking to a client about this last week because there was a lot of, like you said, and it's easy to point fingers. It's like, oh, but this happened and this happened and in the economy and this, and like you can just come up with a million things. And I was like, okay, so we had the conversation about self-responsibility, and it's very humbling. It is so humbling when you can go there and it's like, okay, what's my role in all of this? And when you dive into it, and we dove deep into it, and she completely fell apart. And I'm like, no, let it come. And we just worked through it. And then she's like, oh my God, once she realized that and she started taking the self-responsibility, it was all of a sudden like, boom, like it just opens everything up for the next stages of healing and your next principles.
It really does. And it's so liberating, for me to be able to come home and to be near my family and to love my city and to love the lake and to feel so happy. It's so liberating because it's not a thing anymore. Like before it was this thing that I was like, I want to be around my family, but I don't really like my hometown, and now I'm like, I'm good, and it's a good thing because I'm stuck here. Normally I would be in Tulum, Mexico running my retreat. And this year, all the memories are coming up on social media and all the girls are sharing them out. And I love those retreats, but I don't wish that I was there like I would have before. Now I'm like, we'll do it next year. I'm really happy where I am right now,
And as you're saying that, I was thinking it was because it was December, the first week of December. Bernie and I were normally in Mexico, but we went to the retreat in Salt Spring Island, and that's where we met you.
That's right.
Yeah, Michelle, retreat.
First week in December. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So that's, so taking responsibility for how we feel in our lives is foundational to joy. Right. Mm-hmm. And if we continue to blame other people, then we're always giving the power away to other people. And if they have no care whether we're happy or not, or they don't even know that we put that responsibility on them, then we'll always live without joy.
Yeah.
The people that want us to be joyful are ourselves first and foremost. Everyone else has got their own shit to worry about, truth be told, right?
Exactly.
Like we always think that everybody's concerned about us. I'm like, what if nobody else cares? Like I'm the only person here who really cares about my life.
it's true.
Yeah. So that's principle number 3. Number 4 is taking courageous action. And so, after we make the decision that we're responsible for our own lives, then we have to take some action. And this is where the principles start to get demanding of us, of our energy, because in order to take courageous action, we maybe have to apologize to somebody. We may need to shift gears. We may need to say no to some things that we said yes to, that we feel that we have responsibility for. So we might be letting people down. It's their perception of our experience. If I don't want to do something and I say to somebody, I really don't want to do this, I'm going to feel like I'm letting them down. But the truth is that that's their experience of that. If I decide that I'm going to be worried about letting people down, then they're not making me do that. That's my choice. Even if they said, you're letting me down, I still have a choice to say, well, I'm sorry to feel that way. Or you're absolutely right. Right? So taking courageous action sometimes means doing what is best for you at the risk of not being liked by other people. I feel like everybody talks about courageous action. Like, courageous action is doing what's best for you. Well, I'll tell you why it's so hard for people to do that. It's not because they don't love themselves. It's because they're afraid of what's on the other side, which is other people maybe not approving. And so we have to be okay with people not liking us. We have to be okay with people leaving us. And that is why courageous action is so hard for people.
Yeah.
So I had to make some of those decisions last year. And at the time, it felt very selfish. And I had to really work through that word, because of course, selfish means to be of self. Right? But as a woman, and as a woman in a position of leadership for a movement of women, I was afraid that if I did anything for myself, that I would seem like I wasn't a good leader. Like, it actually went really deep. So if I said I was going to do something, I decided not to, which I did last year. I was going to do 4 live events across Canada last year, and I pulled Vancouver and Toronto. And as a result, I had to pull the speakers, and I had to pull the venues, and it was not a popular choice. And I felt the effects of that, the energy from some of the people that I know felt that I had let them down. But I had to do the courageous thing, which was, this is too much for me. I'm in a year of healing. I don't have the energy that I've had in the past. I'm not Oprah Winfrey with jets and a team behind me. And I need to do 2 of 4. And they're going to be the 2 cities that are my home bases, Calgary and Thunder Bay. Right? Sorry, my dog has decided to be behind me. So it was an unpopular decision. And but it wasn't as unpopular as I thought it would be. So I had made it out to be this really big deal. And I can't tell you how many hours of sleep I lost over it. Like, it's embarrassing. And it was all about the opinions of others. All of it. It was never about, do I want to? Because the answer was absolutely yes. But I still, even me, people always say to me, you're so courageous. I'm like, oh, you think so? I lost days, nights of sleep making this decision. And then when I did, it was like the whole world opened up to me. And I was injected with high octane fuel. Like, it was that powerful to make that decision, But I had to risk not being liked and being popular, So courageous action is often about the shit that's going to come down the pipe that you're going to shoulder anyway. And I think it's really important that we be honest about that. Because when people are afraid, it's because they've had so much loss and so much pain that they can't stand to lose another person. They don't think that they're going to live through it. And so they don't want to disappoint one more person. Right?
Exactly.
But the person that they're really truly disappointing is themselves, because they always live in this I should have, I could have,
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's principle number 4. And then 5 is embracing oneness, which I feel like as a humanity, we're on that path. We've got so far to go, and we won't see it in my lifetime. I know that, but I can certainly embrace oneness in my life and encourage the people around me to do that. And to me, that means inclusivity. It means accepting other people despite their opinions that we don't agree with. It does not mean accepting behavior that's hurtful, because oneness, I really believe, is not hurting one another. So I also think in embracing oneness, there's also a level of responsibility, going back to number 4, that we have to be vocal. And that's hard. I have been incredibly vocal this year about the feminist movement. I have been incredibly vocal this year about my political views. I have been vocal about a lot of things that I wasn't vocal about before because I was afraid. But how can I be a woman and not advocate openly for the equal rights of women? You know?
Exactly.
And it's not exclusive of men at all. My view of feminism is really just like the word feminism means to advocate for women. So there are going to be extremes, but I'm just all about women having, I don't think men and women are equal, but we need to have equal opportunity. You know, we're not equal. We're completely different. It would be stupid if I said my dad and I have the same, like we're not. You know, men and women are very different, but we have equal value, we should have access to equal opportunity. And so embracing oneness is also about being an advocate when you see that oneness is not on the agenda. And this is where it starts to get difficult, right? Because then we have to step forward. And like, for example, me sharing my political views, I am not trying to convince anybody. That's not my method. I just share it because I think it's important for people to know that I advocate for women and women's rights. And so with that will show up also my political views, you know, but I'm not a politician and I'm not a, you know, anyway, it's about being vocal. It's about saying enough. You know, if we want oneness, we have to practice oneness. If we want oneness and we don't see it happening, how can you over there and me here meet in the middle?
Yeah.
Right? So, oh my God. So, you know, I have a family that's red and blue, you know, like even though we're not American, we all know what that means. And I love my family dearly. And somebody had written something on my social media about being scared of the opposition. And I said, oh my God, the opposition are some of my most treasured humans. It's not about me not loving them. It's like, can we have a conversation so that we can come to terms with how we can create oneness together with you over there and me here, right? So that we're actually all in the same, because right now it's there and here, them and us, right? And what I would love to see is all of us in one container with all of our different colors and all of our different languages and all of our different experiences, but we can still manage to live there peacefully because we're all embracing the same idea, which is that we're all one. Yeah. We're all equal in our own way. Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Embracing oneness is kind of the path that I'm on right now. I'm really feeling moved to advocate for women and children and marginalized populations and people in need. And it's kind of where my work is going right now, which I'm loving.
Yeah.
And then the 6th principle is like the greater good. And I feel like that's where that's self-actualization, right? Like that's when we are at our highest level of self, like our highest level of service to self and others is self-actualization, which is serving the greater good. Like what we do impacts the rest of the world in such a positive way. We can't do that if we don't get quiet and figure out who we are. We can't do that if we don't create space to be still. We can't do that if we don't take responsibility. We can't do that if we haven't even looked at our own selves and unraveled our own stories. And we can't do that if we don't see all of the people who we are serving as all deserving of service and love. So as servants of good and light, we can't serve the greater good if we don't believe it includes everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the role of the 6 principles of transcendence. And so what I see is that when we practice all of these things every day, and when we actually take intentional action to this place, then we will transcend. Even just thinking about this process transcends us, which is to rise above our present state.
Exactly.
Right? So that's why I call them the Transcendence Principles, because I feel like if we all do this every day, we're all transcending,
Yeah.
Our former self.
Yeah. I love it.
I need water and I didn't bring any down. But anyway, so I'm sorry for talking so much, but
no, it's perfect. It's beautiful. I love the way you've brought it together, because as coaches and healers and whatever it might be, I just love hearing your take on it, because the coaches I've worked with, the books I've taken, even the courses I teach, there's all of that in it.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it different ways, and different people are going to connect with the way you're delivering it. And
Right.
that's what's so beautiful about your Uncommon Woman group and the way you've just explained it. Cause I just get giddy, because I know some of the women in the group, and I can just see how this is going to be so beautiful and so perfect for them, and how it all just comes together full circle for where you are.
Well, it's funny because I always feel like I'm just kind of not even one step ahead. I'm always just kind of like on a lateral trajectory to the women in the community. And, when last year, when I was going through what I was going through, I knew that I wasn't the only person that was going through it, because we're never the only person going through anything. And so when I started kind of reflecting back, and, the book that I actually did this on is right beside me. It's so funny. I was sitting down 2 weeks ago, end of October, and I was doing my kind of like my strategic plan for next year and on. And I was looking at it and I was going, this doesn't feel right. Like, this is literally it right here. I'll show it to you. And this is my sketchbook, but this is my first version of my strategic plan. Okay. Anyway, so I was creating it because everything always starts with pictures with me. And as I was looking at it, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. This is what I've done in the past. And so I started looking at the areas of it that I felt had broken down, or where I could grow it. And then the Transcendence. So I actually have a program that I was going to add in called Transcendence. And I was like, wait a minute. I feel like everything that I do is about the Transcendence Principles. So this is actually probably going to be like an umbrella for what comes in the future.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I wanted to share it with the ministry was just to see how the women would feel about it. And, the response so far has been amazing. I do it at all wacky times of day. So, people come in and watch when they want, but the response has been really powerful, which is that they feel like it's new content, that it's an upgrade, and that's fun to know that I'm always exploring more,
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're like in wacky times. When I saw that I saw it on the weekend when I saw one of your lives or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to be coming in at different times. And I thought, you know what? I love that.
Part of my transcendence.
I know. I love that, because it's like, if I have to go live every single day at the same time, I'm like, that's too scheduled for me. Yeah. It's too rigid. It's like, that doesn't feel good.
Exactly. And, it makes people unhappy. Like this was all part of it. I love that you mentioned that, because normally I would have the most success just getting great viewership, like in the morning, for example, like a coffee talk. But mornings are mine. I don't normally talk to anybody until like 10 or 11. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I'm just not going to be ready for that, because that's my like that's when I'm doing all this work. And so I thought, no, I just have to be okay with coming in when I have time, when it feels good. I mean, I'm doing it for free as a service into the group. I need to just give myself lots of space for it. Like last night I went in at like 10:30, and there's like nobody on, but it didn't matter, because I'm actually processing these as I'm doing this. So it's me talking my way through them because I just outlined them like 2 weeks ago. Like, they're very new. Like, this is like the first time I've spoken about them outside of the ministry, really. But, so part of creating that space for this process is not tethering yourself to a schedule. Now, that doesn't mean that as an entrepreneur, I don't have a schedule, because I do. Actually, that's part of there's like the strange dichotomy, but this would probably fall under maybe taking courageous action, which is doing something that feels good to me and having no attachment to the fact that, other people might be frustrated by it, for example. But I do show up every day, and and I show up consistently with that, and that's my gift, So, and I hope that it gives other people freedom to say, hey, I want to do something like this, but I don't want to be on a schedule. Well, don't let the schedule stop you from serving, like don't then just show up,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love this. I love this. So people, I'm just going to put here for women to connect with you. Probably the best way is the Uncommon Woman, isn't it?
Yes. So finding me at the Uncommon Woman Ministry is our private Facebook group, and the Uncommon Woman page, Uncommon Woman on all the social media. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Uncommonwoman.com is where you can find some of my programs. Yeah, I'm easy to find. I am connecting with people more on the Uncommon Woman and my Marlo Ellis page. I'm really trying to just shift things over because it's too much for me to manage. It's another thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Simplifying the social media. But yeah, and I love having new people come into the community. And I always encourage people to come into the Uncommon Woman Ministry, which is a private Facebook group, and just like feel it out. Mm-hmm. And see if it's a space that feels safe and good to you, because we're all in a lot of groups and it can be overwhelming, but there's something about this group that's different. And I always encourage people to just come in, and I really try to serve up a lot of valuable content, and there's no gobbledygook in there, like none. Yeah. And so it's a very safe, neat, powerful container. And I think there's like 2,000 women in there now, which is like incredible. Super excited about that. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
What is your favorite, what's your favorite principle? Like, which one really resonates with you?
You know what? The stillness. Because that's where it begins. Do
you struggle with that?
You know what? Not as much as I used to. I've really been working on that. Probably, I'd say back in August, I took 2 full weeks where and then I wanted to continue on, and I'm kind of feeling a little bit again, like I need to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's so.
All of that pull. Mm-hmm. I did that in August as well. I took a 2-week spiritual retreat. My spiritual mentor, basically told me, she said, this is what you need. And it was really hard for me because I'd never really done that, to that extent. But it felt so good. Yeah. So good. Exactly. Well, that's good.
Well, thank you. I'm going to get you to hold on a minute, but thank you so much for being here, everybody. And those of you on live and on the replay, give us a hashtag replay, and reach out to Marlo. And
let's connect, sisters. Thank you so much, Shawna.
Thank you, sweetie.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day.